Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this podcast episode, I'm going to be interviewing Ryan Forrest, who is not only a longtime friend of mine, but even a business partner. He was formerly partnered in my consulting agency, Silvertone Analytics, and we actually work on projects to this day. Ryan is the CEO and the founder of Fungi Marketing, which is a marketing agency that focuses on handling marketing campaigns and also studying marketing data. In this podcast episode, we're going to focus on how Ryan got his start in the marketing space, how he upskilled and leveled up his career, and also at the end of the podcast, we're going to talk through the realities of being a marketing agency owner. If at any point you find value out of this podcast and want to give back to the channel, the best thing you can do is to leave a like, a comment, or even share this video, as this will help boost our signal on the algorithm and get even more exposure out on YouTube and in the podcasting world. Without further ado, let's start the interview with Ryan. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. So today I have got a longtime friend of mine and someone that I've actually worked with. So Ryan Forrest is the CEO, although wait, what are you calling yourself nowadays? You said Director of Sales and Marketing?
Director of Sales and Marketing, Founder and Chief Fungi, all the titles work.
Okay. So he runs his own marketing analytics agency, and he was actually a former business partner of mine at Silvertone before we rolled that up into an LLC. So me and Ryan have been working together for 4 years now?
Yeah.
So he's also become a really close friend of mine. And I think that he is a perfect ideal guest for the podcast because he has an area of expertise, which is marketing. And he's also an expert in marketing data, so marketing analytics. So Ryan, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and talk about the work that you do?
Sure. As you said, my name's Ryan Forrest, and I'm the founder and digital strategist, kind of key consultant for Fungi Marketing. We're an exclusively digital marketing agency, and we do a lot of consultative marketing for small to mid-sized businesses. And most of that centers around using tools like website analytics to gain insights into what's currently going on within their organization to help them make data-driven demand generation decisions to drive revenue for their company.
Wow. You've got your sales pitch down.
Was that a mouthful of stuff?
Well, no. So
in short, we use data to help people make money.
There you go. That's the elevator pitch. But for you guys out there listening, one of the big things I've learned from Ryan is that he is excellent at sales and communicating his message. He's definitely been a role model for me in terms of learning how to pitch myself. And we've actually been in client pitch meetings together, kind of underneath the Silvertone moniker. So seeing Ryan in action is it's a spectacle to behold.
Oh, thank you.
But I think also the audience would be interested in kind of the highlights of your career journey, because I know you started off as a marketing specialist. Actually, Yep. You were selling marketing, right?
Yeah. So, do you want me to just kind of give you the quick 10,000 foot view of my journey?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, I was I was in university, I was at college. I'm originally from Rochester, Michigan, up kind of near Detroit area. And I had bounced around to a whole bunch of different focuses for my degree. I'd started in engineering, and then I moved to nursing and eventually landed on marketing. So I was building this kind of weird hybrid, they called it an interdisciplinary degree, because I had a lot of credits from undergrad, but had like no clear focus on what I wanted to do. And at that same time, I was about 2.5 years into schooling, and I was like, I really need to like get an internship somewhere. The career counselors at the university were recommending it. So I kind of put together like a 1-page resume that had, my restaurant service experience. And, I worked at the local hospital as like a secretary for a little while, and gave that to the career services people and said, hey, I'm looking for kind of anything in business and marketing. And as a result, a couple interviews in, I got a job at this local e-commerce, basically e-commerce custom design, custom development, and marketing company called Brand Labs up in Rochester. And my first role was really a marketing internship, which graduated to like sort of a marketing specialist role. And most of what I was doing was cutting edge search engine optimization projects, and merchandising. I was helping to like upload these massive data sheets worth of like products and information to e-commerce websites, and then optimize the content for search engines like Google, Yahoo, Bing, stuff like that. Um, and then, so about, I can't remember if it was like somewhere between the 6 month and the 1 year mark, I was on the phone with a client talking through some of the projects that we were working on for them, and they were like, "Hey, we'd really like to just kind of get you to do this stuff ongoing for us." And I was like, "Well, I'll talk to my boss. We can put together like a maintenance agreement for you." And um, so long story short, my boss saw that as like a signal that I could do sales.
Yeah.
And I started, so I started to kind of transition into a sales role. And then for really the next 5 years, that was my main role for the organization, was selling e-commerce website design and marketing. But one of the great things, and it was a wonderful experience, I was surrounded by a bunch of talented people. So I learned a lot from those people, even in like a sales role. And I was pretty good at sales, but the thing that really elevated my sales and selling skills was the ability to connect to a client's data and leverage the marketing team that was already in place to sort of do analysis on that data. And at that time, Google Analytics was around, and obviously it's huge now, but this is 12, 13 years ago.
Can we
And we
pause
had,
there and talk about how do you sell data, or how do you, because something that I push on the podcast a lot is the number one soft skill that I think the audience should have is the skill that I call influence, which is kind of sales mixed in with communication. So how are you using data to influence someone to make a decision?
yeah, well, it's a great pattern disruptor because the prospective client, when they call you, they know they're going to get some kind of sales pitch, and typically it's going to be something about like how many impressions we can get you, or how much performance you're going to see as a result of our campaigns, and look at our really pretty proposals and stuff like that. And what I said is like, we're not going to talk about anything. We're not going to talk about the services you've requested. We're not going to talk about a redesign until we do a deep dive into your data and gain an understanding of how things are performing right now, as well as like if you have data quality issues or something like that, we want to fix that first. Because it's, I mean, that, and so that in and of itself, they're like, oh, wait, what? Like everybody else is just pitching me, they're going to get me, 1 million views and 1,000 clicks. And, I thought that was good enough. So our approach is very different. And we were, offering a premium service, so we needed to justify, this kind of consultative approach anyways. So it's
Yeah.
a bigger pitch, but there was a ton more trust. And that's the big component of sales, is that, you want the person on the other end of the sales experience to trust you. And you want to do good work for them so that you retain them as a client.
Right. So what I'm kind of pulling out of that, from my perspective, is that you're leveraging their data sources as an opportunity to listen to what's going well. Maybe we could accentuate that. Or, you're not doing so great in this area, and here's some potential solutions. So that kind of goes right into the building trust. So if I'm telling you I'm going to get you 1 million impressions or, 1,000 clicks, that's about the agency. That's not about kind of authentically interacting with the client and what they're dealing with. So I think it's kind of an opportunity to be a little bit empathetic and kind of sit with them and their problems. And then, instead of being on this side of the table and I'm pitching you, it's like I've come around the table and we're looking at this problem together.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So, okay, sorry, I totally interrupted your story. You
It's okay.
got into sales, then what happened?
So I was in sales, doing really well, and there was some organizational changes, and I made the decision to kind of switch career paths. I will say, kind of tangentially related to this, is one of the developers that I was working with kind of took me under his wing and gave me like this book on HTML and coding and stuff. And so I actually like I built my own website, which I don't know if it's even in existence anymore, but I built my first website just using straight HTML code, and then leveraged that to start pitching some freelance work because I wanted some extra cash and it was just kind of a fun side project at that time. But, you know, that wasn't my full-time career. And at the time, it wasn't really my plan to be self-employed. I wanted to go the kind of the traditional corporate route. But I wanted to switch too, because a lot of what I was doing in sales was this analysis, this strategic account management. I think e-commerce analyst was a component of my title for the company. And I wanted to see what it was like to work on the marketing team as opposed to the sales team. And that's when I moved to Greensboro originally from Detroit, and became the digital team leader for a local agency down here, which was a really interesting experience. I'm very grateful for it now. At the time, it totally kind of uprooted my thought process, because I was still, when I got down there, I was like edgy, and I got called like a maverick by my boss, and like I was used to working with you know, these people that, you know, I don't know if it's a thing between North and South or what, but we ended up like, it was a much slower pace, and I was just like, go, go, go. I was like, let's sell some more stuff, you know, like I want to help everybody get bonuses. I want a bonus, you know, we're going to start selling this stuff, and I'm going to do strategy. And you know, I ruffled some feathers, but I ended up staying there for a few years as the team leader. And ultimately, at that point, I had started building my freelance business to a point where I didn't have to work for somebody else. I could work for myself, which is a much longer story. But
Yeah,
I,
that's an episode into itself.
that is an episode unto itself. But yeah, that was kind of my track. And so I really cut my teeth both on the sales side of things and, you know, working with primarily CEOs and marketing directors for some pretty decent size, you know, in some cases, Global 100 and Fortune 500 companies. And so I got very comfortable and familiar with talking to those people, which kind of just helped my sales process too, because when it comes down to it, everybody's just a human being. And if you can earn their trust, anybody's going to give you the time of day, which is good.
Well, you didn't get to the best part of your story.
Oh, when I met you?
Yeah, when our paths crossed.
Yeah, well, that's pretty. I think that a lot of happy connections came as a result of like getting out of home. So like working remotely is great, and being able to travel is great. But when, you know, I finally like settled down and got to what used to be HQ Greensboro, is now Transform Greensboro, the co-working space downtown. We met, and then shortly thereafter, I think, is when we got introduced. Well, I already knew Gary. I want to say, did Gary recommend that the two of us connect?
So, okay, I guess let's back up. For those of you guys who haven't watched every single episode, which, by the way, how dare you? I think the second episode was with Gary Fly, who is now, he keeps switching positions from CEO to CMO to president, but he runs this company called the Brooks Group here in Greensboro. And Ryan's consulting for them, and I'm currently consulting with them. But flashback to 2 years ago, it was me, Ryan, and Gary as partners in Silvertone. So we had an LLP spun up. But the way that happened was I worked from home. You know, I think you guys have probably heard my story at this point, where I went directly from my MBA. I turned my last internship into my first consulting client, worked from home for 2 months, and then got lonely and decided that I wanted to go and work out of HQ Greensboro. So I think about 3 months into working there, I ran into Gary Fly and kind of told him what I was doing. And at the time, he had his own fractional CXO business. So he was a fractional, like a interim CFO, or no, anything but CFO. So CXO, so CEO, CMO, COO. So he'd come in and flip a company around. I told him what I was doing. He was like, wow, we should totally work together, because this could be potentially a way for him to lead back analytics systems that we could, have a recurring revenue stream from. And then Ryan came back from, I believe you were like, 6 months in Italy?
Yeah, in Europe, I was in Croatia and Italy for that time frame, and I had actually met Gary. I think it was about 3 months before I got on a plane with a one-way ticket. Didn't even buy a return ticket, and at the time he was working for a special vehicles company. That was like kind of his like main role,
Right.
but still doing the fractional work, and yeah, and we'd done some business together at that point. So I think like it was about 6 months there, and then probably another 6 months back in the States before settling back in Greensboro, and then that's around when we all got together.
Yeah, and that was where I really learned a lot from both you and Gary. Just definitely was pretty much uncomfortable for, I mean, how long were we partnered for? Like a year and a half? You guys were like bringing in these deals, and I was like, I don't know how to do this. And you're like, well, figure it out. You're like, here's the trick. You need to know about 80% of what you pitch, and then the last 20% you kind of figure it out as you go
Wow,
along.
80%, that's generous. I think we probably said like 50-50,
Oh
as
wow.
long as you're
Yeah.
somewhat strong with it.
Yeah, that was definitely extremely stressful, but I don't know. That may be one of the highest growth periods of my life. In that, well, I guess I'm in like a new high growth period, in that I've got like the YouTube channel, the podcasts, the teaching, and the consulting. So that definitely kind of ramped me up to where I'm in this place now. Um, but cool. I think that pretty much, and also I love how succinct you are in your stories. You're like, high point, here's the interesting point, here's the next, big detail, interesting points. So I can totally see the sales, and then also kind of like the storytelling component
Well,
of what
thank
you
you.
do.
Yeah, no, I'm not a man of many words. Most of the people that meet me, I think their initial impressions, even like close friends, and maybe you can, you know, and you can
Attest.
empathize or attest to this. I tend to be like a little bit quieter in the groups because I'm more of an observer than a participant in a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
activities, which I think has helped me a lot because, one of the keys in selling, for instance, is, just shut your mouth. The more the client talks, the better your chances are for them to sign a deal.
Right.
But to the same degree, I think a little bit to my detriment, because sometimes, unless I'm like getting up and speaking in front of a group of people or something, I'm still pretty reserved in groups. Even at networking events, I'll just latch onto like one or two people and talk to them the whole time, as opposed to like buzzing around.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I guess let's move on to, maybe you can give them a little bit of the highlights of like kind of the projects or the types of projects that you and I typically collaborate on, which I guess we're still doing to this day. So we're not officially in the same LLP, but the project work is still coming in, which is delightful, especially right now.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think a lot of times, especially like the things that I've seen, your strengths for us is kind of in the way that you approach data analytics. I've kind of like developed a formula that works for me within my kind of like minimal purview. Like I'm really just kind of I'm like 80% sales or 80% marketing analytics, and then 20% sales analytics, and then anything that goes beyond that, like supply chain or just other business intelligence things, I just have no concept for how to merge that data together. And so I think, that works really well for us because, like with some of the clients, you do kind of more the sales and financial analysis, and then I'm doing kind of more the marketing analysis, but we can kind of, play ideas off of one another to come up with a better end product. And even like the, can we say other client names like Leadership Winston-Salem?
Yeah. They know.
No,
They know
they're
about
aware that we're, yeah. So
I'm
like
pretty
with
sure.
projects, with this project for this nonprofit, we built like a kind of like a multi-tab dashboard with different components. And I think it kind of started out and we all kind of got together and brainstormed what we thought the key data points were going to be. And then you like put together visualizations, you massaged the data, you brought everything in. And then I looked at it and I was like, well, we really need to like tweak it here, here, and here, because like, I think from the decision maker's perspective and from just a visual marketing perspective, that they would prefer to see it like this. And then you go back and you kind of make changes. And so like the end result's like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of equation. Where I can, kind of leverage some of my historical experience, and then, you have your specialties.
Yeah. What was really interesting about that project is that was quintessentially the example of using, so Leadership Winston-Salem had an impact out, like they're a nonprofit out in Winston-Salem and they do like leadership training. So what they hired us to do was to build out a dashboard showing their impact. So essentially this dashboard was a sales tool to get more funding for them. So it's yet another example of using data to influence others to make a decision. So in this example, it was, people from huge companies like BB&T or Wells Fargo signing a check to say, yep, you're doing a great service to our community and we want to send, our high risers to get trained by you.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So, and also too, I think getting back to your point that you mentioned earlier about where you and I kind of interface. So you could kind of like, we're kind of going to get into like overlapping circles here. So you can tell them what's selling well and what is like, what message or what aspect of the product is marketing is really working in the marketing setting. And then maybe where I can come in is I can say, all right, well, these are the profitable products. So kind of, you want to sell things that you're making, a lot of sales on, you have the right message, but they're also the most profitable products that you're selling. So that's kind of like and granted guys, this is like a very simplified, stripped down example of how we might interface together. But, knowing those 3 different data points, that can be a huge difference. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value to a client that we'd work with.
And I think too, going back to kind of the original Silvertone Analytics philosophies, we kind of approached organizations that were operating in silos, or, sales didn't talk to marketing, didn't talk to finance, didn't talk to supply chain, whoever. And then, like creating this kind of like way for all of the key decision makers to understand how each one impacted the other. And that's, I think that's one of the awesome things about working in a collaborative group where you have people from different skill sets, is that at the end of the day, you can, like, I never would have been able to, I think like I had just scratched the surface between sales and marketing a few years ago, so, but then to bring in these other kind of core components of an organization, and analyze them and use it to make really key strategic decisions, sometimes $100,000+ decisions for those companies. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah. And it was also a wonderful opportunity to learn how both you and Gary think, because, I came directly from my MBA, so I didn't like have this wealth of real world work experience where I had some wins under my belt. I mean, I guess by the time that I met Gary, I had built out an analytics infrastructure and had combined multiple data sources together. So I kind of had like an inkling of, all right, this is what is valuable in what I can do, what I'm kind of uniquely gifted to provide a business. But he really came in and taught me about strategy. Like he just knows, I don't know what it is about him. He's got that velvet touch. He can just, not only strategy, but he can also just like read people, and just the way he operates is phenomenal. It's awesome.
Yeah. He's a great pattern interrupter too, kind of going back to earlier. Like,
What do you mean by that?
He's just like, he's very disarming. Like when you meet and speak with him, and then you kind of realize all of his like rich history and experience, and like, kind of like the his background, the fact that he's a certified barbecue judge. I mean, there's just all of this like nuance to him, and it really makes you like want to engage with him more.
Yeah.
I think it draws people towards him, which is cool.
Interesting. All right. So let's close out this interview on, I really think this is an interesting topic, and we've actually talked about this recently, of what are we doing? So you and I are actually collaborating with Greensboro College, my analytics minor program. So what we're doing for, I don't know if I've told the audience, like the student practicum component of the analytics, case studies and business analytics course I'm teaching right now. But I've added this student practicum where the students are helping me study my YouTube data, come up with ad copy, and we're now running YouTube ads. So those skippable ads that you see, you might actually have seen it on this specific video where you have 5 seconds and you can click out. So we have spun up 2 different campaigns. How are we interfacing on that, Ryan?
Well, I mean, our Fungi and myself in this case, we've got a lot of like experience doing Google advertising, specifically with YouTube display advertising and search. And so I think you and I had been talking about it for a few months.
Yeah, that's true.
We kind of took the students' strategic recommendations. I think you put together 2 different videos, one for the skippable, or are they both skippable?
They're both skippable right now.
One's the advertisement and one's a kind of a promotion for the channel. And then we set up some ad campaigns to promote those via YouTube. So we've got, I think both are based in the US because we were trying to draw in a larger US audience. We set kind of like a cost per view strategy. So there's all sorts of different costing strategies within Google Ads. There's a cost per click, a cost per view, cost per view for YouTube videos. There's a couple others as well, but yeah, so we kind of set that strategy, and it's been going for about a week now, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. And we already have one pretty sizable win right now, which is cool. Which I guess to kind of talk a little bit more about how I brought the students in. So one of the things that I noticed is that the students, almost all of them, have no work experience right now. And I kind of brought up the concept that, hey, I've got this YouTube channel. I'm planning on putting together an ad budget and creating some new content. Would you guys like to actively participate in that? And they jumped all over it. They loved the concepts. And it's also pretty cool to see them kind of like buy into the YouTube channel, because it's like, it's no longer, this is my YouTube channel. This is our YouTube channel. So it kind of feels like, more like a community, like we're on the same team and we're working on a project together. But what we did was one day I had the students, I broke them into 2 teams, by the way, and we studied my YouTube demographics data to come up with 2 different buyer personas. So within this YouTube's channel's demographics, it skews probably 80% male, and the age range is anywhere from 18 to 44. So then I kind of introduce, and this is such a cool conduit to actually introduce concepts that people like you, Ryan, are using out in the business world. I was like, all right, well, we need to break down, males between 18 and 44 into different demographics. And I introduced the concept of a buyer persona. And then we kind of were thinking through, all right, are there different subsets of people within that 18 to 44 age bracket? And kind of talking with them, they kind of thought out like, well, yeah, if you're 18 to 22, you're probably in college. But if you're 23 to 44, you're not looking for your first job, you're looking for your second job. So then we actually labeled the buyer persona. So we had, the learners, which are the students, and then we had kind of transitioners. And ultimately we decided to go with the transitioners, and then wrote the ad copy, which they wrote the first script of. And I think the big win that we've had is that they wrote a really good hook. And Ryan, why don't you tell them a little bit about the fact that they helped me write some really good copy, how did that show up in the data specifically for video retention?
Yeah, well, I think we compared it against a video ad that you had run several months back, as far as, in particular, the average view time of that video in particular.
Hmm.
And I want to say that the difference was, well, first off, the video was a little bit shorter. It's like a minute and a
Right.
half versus the previous one that was like 3 or 4 minutes.
It was 4.5
Um,
minutes.
4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, and we had set some of that targeting too. I can't remember how specific we got on the age, but there was some of that buyer persona influencing how we market to people on YouTube, because Google's got all of these sophisticated ways of telling who you can target, how you can target them. But yeah, the end result was, I think it went from people dropping off after like 5 or 6 seconds to something like 25 to 30% of all viewers of this advertisement actually watched it all the way through to the end, which is a
Right.
pretty fantastic performance metric,
Yeah. Yeah. That.
especially in the ad space. And you think about, we got the election going on right now. I mean, it's like crazy to think that you could get such good performance, just from a short ad like that.
Yeah, that was a huge win, and that's something that part of the student practicum is that, yeah, I want them to work with real data and come out with real results, but I want them. We're going to, towards the end of the class, is actually have them write it out on LinkedIn, and that is a demonstrative win. So we can say, I actually just looked at the Google ads right before this interview. The first iteration of the sponsorship ads, 3% watched it all the way through. This newer version, 22% watched it all the way through. So calculate
Yep.
the percentage win of that, and that's something that you can actually talk about within an interview. So, because what I'm a little bit worried about is people are going to be like, well, you're just using these students as like slave labor. And I guess to thwart that accusation is that I could do this on my own and it would be much more time efficient. What the beauty in this approach is that I'm taking a little bit more time, which is, I mean, it's costing me a little bit of money because I'm losing some time and efficiency, but students are getting to see a practical approach to the concepts we talk about within class.
Yeah, it's a real business
Yeah.
use case, and it's like a real-time kind of case study. They don't have to go out and get an internship to have something on there. And I think about too, just kind of harkening back to when I was getting an internship, even some of the companies that I was applying for, they saw that I didn't have any like marketing experience, and they were like, sorry, we can't help you. And I was
Hmm.
like, it's an internship. The whole point is experience.
Wow.
Well, that was my philosophy at the time. Now it's a little bit different, but think about like those students that are going through this course with you right now, already have stuff that they can add to their portfolio of work, and it's really meaningful. And I would say that most organizations probably aren't even doing this level of analysis for themselves. So to have somebody come in who's just graduated with like an analytics focus, whether it's a master's program or undergrad, is huge. And like even in our case, we get applicants all the time for work, and most of them claim to be social media experts and stuff like that. And then we ask them, what experience do you have with analytic tools? And then they're like, what's an analytic tool? It's like, yeah, nothing.
Wow.
And now
Awesome.
you've got 20 something candidates that are more qualified than most of the people that I get applications from.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you? I know that you are an up and coming aspiring YouTuber.
Yeah, so the YouTube channel, I think we've got like 16, 15-ish videos right now. It's called Data Driven Demand Generation, which is also Fungi Marketing's tagline. Um, and then I guess you'll probably include links to like my LinkedIn profile and stuff like that
Yeah, I'll
in
leave
the
I'll leave some
comments.
yeah, in the comment section.
Cool. So that's, if you want to connect with me personally, just send me a note. A lot of requests to connect, so just be like, hey, I saw you on this podcast or something. And then for Fungi Marketing, just go to fungimarketing.com or type that in Google and check us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.